On Thursday, February 28th, 2019, about 1:45 p.m., San Jose police officers responded to a report of a dead body in the 900 block of Knollfield Way in San Jose. Earlier in the day, the victim's son was contacted by her co-workers, informing him that she had not showed up for work. Her son and co-worker went to the victim's home and found her mother murdered and called the police. Arriving officers located victim Bambi Larson deceased in her bedroom, suffering from multiple stab wounds, consistent with a cutting tool, multiple lacerations to her body and what appeared to be blunt force trauma, a bloody towel and footprints left by the suspect near a sliding door, and the investigation began. The victim, Bambi Lynn Larson, was a 59-year-old mother and systems manager in San Jose. The evening before her murder appears to have concluded like any other normal evening would have. Again, like I mentioned, there was no other case that was on our officers' minds in this one. Officers began to secure the scene, and as homicide detectives responded, along with our day detectives who organized interviews, conducted background research and extensive canvass for surveillance video and witnesses. Community service officers deployed on several days to pull video and search physical evidence. A crime scene unit called the Santa Clara County Crime Lab to process the scene to ensure the highest possible level of evidence recovery processing was being done. I have to give credit to our crime lab for their efforts that resulted in the DNA hit that would later lead to the suspect's capture. Approximately 460 hours of surveillance video was analyzed. We were able to locate through surveillance video the suspect's ingress and egress to and from the neighborhood. The home security cameras showed an unidentified male wearing a backpack, pants, and a long-sleeve sweater or shirt as he approached and later left the victim's residence. Early video obtained by the suspect was too grainy to make an identification. Critical evidence was recovered along the suspect's path of egress on Knollfield, including T-shirts which contained the victim's blood and the suspect's DNA. Special Operations, Street Crimes, Violent Crimes Enforcement Team, Metro, began checking the immediate area and elsewhere for possible suspects. Air 3 took aerial photos of the neighborhood to locate possible trails for ingress and egress by the suspect as well. On March 10th, officers Mike Rubal, who I have to make note is a former San Jose police officer who has just returned back home, and his FTO Mike Roberson, stopped and arrested the suspect for possession of methamphetamine at Foxworthy and Pearl. He was taken to the San Jose PD for processing, where a DNA sample was obtained, and he was cited and released for the narcotic offense. Minded, at this time, DNA results had not come back matching the suspect to the crime. On Monday, the crime lab returned a DNA match on suspect Arevalo-Carranza. A warrant was obtained for the suspect, and it was officers Rubal and Roberson again who located and arrested the suspect for the murder of Bambi Larson. The victim's phone and Kindle were later located with the suspect's personal property. The suspect, Carlos Arevalo-Carranza, stalked this San Jose neighborhood and his victim. He is a San Jose transient who is known to camp near Capitol and Snell and is a self-admitted gang member. His criminal history convictions consist of, in February of 2013, he was detained by the Department of Homeland Security at the border near McAllen, Texas, and deported. In 2015, he was arrested for possession of paraphernalia. In 2015, he was convicted of burglary in San Jose. In 2016, battery of an officer, resisting arrest, and entering and occupying a property. In October of 2016, he was arrested for battery in the city of Los Angeles. In 2017, he was arrested and convicted for false imprisonment in San Jose. On April of 18, he was arrested for paraphernalia again. In May, arrested for possession of methamphetamine and possession of paraphernalia. On August of 18, he was arrested for prowling and stimulant influence. On October of 18, he was arrested for false identification, paraphernalia once again, prowling and trespassing while a resident was present. And in January of this year, he was arrested for possession of methamphetamine and paraphernalia. He is currently on probation for the possession of methamphetamine and paraphernalia, false imprisonment, and burglary. Unfortunately, this individual ICE had placed detainers on this individual 6 separate times 2 in the Los Angeles area, and 4 in the county of Santa Clara. Now, I know where this is headed, and the questions regarding our immigration policy will come, so I'm going to answer them now. Our job as police officers in this city is to protect and embrace everyone. That includes our otherwise law-abiding undocumented residents that make this city and our country better. Those undocumented residents who are not violent or serious criminals should not fear the police. But when we have violent or serious offenders that are preying on our community, we must have the ability to protect our residents. We will go to the ends of the earth to find a predator like this. We put the case together, put them in jail, and then it's up to the rest of the system to determine what happens next. The city of San Jose and our police department has no control over how the county interacts with federal immigration enforcement and deportation of violent or serious felons like Carlos Eduardo-Carranza. Those policies are not set at our level. I've spoken to Sheriff Lori Smith, and she agrees that these policies need to be discussed with the policymakers along with the heads of police agencies who are entrusted to provide public safety for their communities. Let me be clear. We are here to protect and to embrace our otherwise law-abiding, undocumented residents. We are not here, nor should we be here, to shield admitted gangsters or violent criminals, regardless of immigration status.
Ask when they arrest or pull over a car, immigration status.
No, we do not.
And how does that square with what you're saying today?
Well, what I'm saying today, our job as law enforcement is to take care of a crime, and if that individual needs to go to jail, then that individual goes to jail. The thing that people need to understand is individuals need to pay their price to society here. And then after that, the process takes over, whether someone's going to get deported and released to ICE or not. Our job as police officers is to take care of the problem on the street, which is why it's so important that we don't ask that, because we're here to protect everyone, and we certainly don't want our otherwise law-abiding, undocumented residents fearful of the police and fearful of being asked that question for fear of deportation.
Any thoughts of rethinking that policy now?
The thinking of that policy truly would not have any effect on this. It really would not. At the end of the day, it really comes down to sitting down with our policymakers to try to figure out exactly what type of individuals do we want on the streets of our county and in our cities.
So when should he have been turned over, given those detention orders, when could he have been turned over? January, last October, prior to that?
Wow, he could have been turned over 6 times. However, I can't answer those questions. Those questions have to be answered by the county.
There's so many different crimes going back to 2017. Why is he still walking around?
Another real good question. We have one of the front parts of the criminal justice system, not the back end. And as I made mention, when our officers do their duty, do their jobs, it's up to the rest of the system to pick us up. And quite frankly, to pick the rest of this community up. And I'll tell you, and I'll sit here, most of you know me, I'm not a sit in my office type of chief. I will go out and I will speak to our undocumented residents, and I will look them in the eye, and they have told me that they don't want these individuals living next to them either. And I have done that. So this isn't about politics, this is about public safety.
But then again, you're mentioning that as like one of the first, things about this case. So this case is probably going to be politicized as other ones, like in San Francisco, because of the fact that this guy is undocumented.
All I can tell you, this is part of this individual's history. As I sit here every time with every case, I can't pick and choose when I'm going to give the history of a murder suspect. Most of the time, this isn't part of the history of a murder suspect. Okay? This doesn't happen regularly. One of the things that we were going to have this press conference is here for a reason, and the reason is that this type of homicide doesn't happen in San Jose. I've been here 27 years. I've been a homicide detective with Assistant Chief Knopf, and I can probably count on 3 fingers the times that we have had a stranger break into someone's home and brutally murder them. That's what this was about. And again, and my heart goes out to the victim's family. So whether or not things get politicized, I am just here to tell you that this isn't about politics. This is about public safety.
Wall would stop this guy from coming back to the country?
I don't know what would have stopped him from coming back to the country. I mean, again, I'm that, and again, not going into the politics of things. I'm not going to answer whether a wall would have stopped this or not stopped it. I mean, I understand where you're going. I understand where all of this will go at some point, but you know, that conversation is not. I'm not going to comment on that.
Besides the immigration part of this case, could you share a little more details about how this guy got into the victim's house, and if this could have been prevented as like any other person regardless of the immigration side? Like, how can people protect themselves?
Well, I'll tell you right now, and I'll say this, I don't care what type of system someone has, but every area, every resident of the city should invest in some sort of camera surveillance. I can't tell you how invaluable having that was for us and is for us. Not only as a deterrent, but then to also help solve crimes. You know, and again, I don't, you know, with this individual, when we talk about preventing, you know, this woman was murdered. I'm certainly not going to sit here and tell you that there could have been things that she could have done to avoid it. She shouldn't have been murdered. You know, it is a stark, again, like I said, of the evil that exists in this world and what people do to each other. I'm not going to say she did a thing wrong other than trying to live her life. But I will say, from a public safety perspective, that cameras in that neighborhood really, truly helped us get to where we're at today.
Chief, was this a completely random murder? Was there any relationship that you've been able to tie together these two individuals?
We're still looking right now, but I'll tell you, we're struggling to find a relationship. We're struggling to find a connection, rather, would probably be the best way to put it, between the suspect and the victim.
Stalking her per se, or just stalking in the neighborhood?
Well, as you look at the video surveillance, as I have, you know, the individual certainly, you know, knew where he was going. You know, and when you know, from the experience that we have, quite frankly, when we can't find a connection between a suspect and a victim, and then in addition to, it really looks that the individual knew exactly where they were going, leads us to kind of believe that he had seen and had been walking around the neighborhood for a while and knew where he was going.
Chief, in all the video that you looked over, had you been seen in that neighborhood before over the past weeks or months prior to the incident?
That's unknown at this time. We're still scouring a lot of other stuff. Our main responsibility is to get this guy in custody. I mean, I'll tell you, that neighborhood out there was besides themselves, quite frankly. And as I mentioned earlier, we do not get these type of crimes. I don't know, most cities don't get these type of crimes. And it was, that neighborhood was on edge, and so that was our very first priority.
In the surveillance video, do you at all see him changing his clothes, removing clothes after this murder had happened?
The only thing I'll say on that is there was times where he did remove clothes, and he seemed to know where some surveillance cameras were and tried to cover his face as he was walking by some. It was definitely, when he was coming out of the residence, he definitely had a, you know, he certainly was not walking as if he had not just done something.
So after his arrest, what is next now? He's still in prison. Is there like any other process that might, you know, put you in contact with immigration authorities?
And again, as I mentioned earlier, that's not we don't have the contact with them. Once now he's in Santa Clara County Main Jail, and the relationship or the collaboration or lack thereof is at that point from this point on.